Welcome to another Mailbag. I'm Jared Johnson. I'm joined by the Mighty Joe Yeager. Mighty Joe, how you doing, man?
Doing good, man. Got some action back here. They're planting the trees, so that means that it's just about done. The sports facility over there is just around the corner now.
As a matter of fact, I can tell you all this because it's happening. By the time you see this, it'll be that day. They're doing a ribbon cutting deal, like ceremony on Friday, 4 p.m. We're going to be there. Double T Farmers going to have an awesome photo gallery for you. I'm going to have video for you that evening. So really exciting. SBC is officially opening, just like we talked about in October, the middle of October. So just in time for the Iowa State game. It's going to look really good for y'all when you show up Saturday for the game. But we have some great questions from y'all. We're going to jump right into them. Some ones this week really had me thinking, my Joe. We're going to open up with Tall Raider, who wants to know how good is Iowa State's front seven.
Very solid, very respectable front seven. I'd say probably the bell cow up there is, believe it or not, a former quarterback, Joel Lanning, who's now a linebacker and is maybe one of the better linebackers in the Big 12 right now. He's very good, they don't have any a lot of super disruptive superstars up front or anything like that, but they just got a bunch of really good solid guys. They generate a respectable amount of pressure. They're not crazy, insane, just breathing down your neck all the time, but they're good enough to keep you off your spot and make you a little bit uncomfortable, which is something Texas Tech doesn't need at the quarterback position.
Right.
So a good solid group, not going to be easy to run the ball against. Very fundamentally sound, well coached, and these guys, they don't make a lot of mistakes, so you got to beat them. You got to move them out. It'll be a challenge.
Yeah, it will be. I'm going to give you some stats. Joe had some great stuff there, so I'll give you some stats. Iowa State is third in the Big 12 as far as rush defense, giving up just 119 yards per game. They're second in the Big 12 as far as pass defense, giving up just 2 yards per game. Overall, second in the Big 12 with 356.2 yards per game, and they're tied with Tech for sacks per game, fourth in the Big 12 with 2 per game. So, Tech's gonna have their hands full. I still think if they execute and the offensive line comes ready to play, that they'll be able to get it done. But this isn't the normal Iowa State team. They're well coached too. I think that's one thing to point out, is this team is obviously very well coached. Juicebox asks, is Coach Joe Robinson to blame for the horrendous special teams unit this season? I mean, for me, I always say if you're in a position of leadership, then yes. I mean, last year, they got some bad luck, don't get me wrong, with Clayton Hatfield getting hurt. But yeah, it's 2 years in a row they've underperformed.
My feeling is that if Hatfield hadn't gotten hurt, this question probably wouldn't have got asked. The kicking game is really where it's all at. That's where the bad things are happening. Other areas are, not great, but not terrible. I mean, Panazzolo hasn't really blossomed yet, but he had a decent game last week, I thought, as a punter. Converted a fake punt. I think the return games, I think Cameron Batson is on the verge of breaking something. Every game, it looks like he's coming close, and I think that's going to happen here before too long. Not getting anything out of punt returns to speak of, but kick return game not looking too bad. Coverage units okay. It's just that kicking game, the field goals and the extra points. That's all.
And the kickoff too, though, which has nothing to do with Hatfield, because he was never going to be your kickoff specialist. So.
Right. Well, you don't want Barden. Obviously, was kicking the ball out of bounds. Terrible. Last week they corrected that by just telling him kick it straight down the pipe. Which maybe he should have been doing all along. Yeah. I think it's a little bit of a mixed bag there. I won't put it completely on Robinson, but the buck stops at the coach as well. So you can look at it both ways.
He's let's see. After the coordinators, he's the highest paid coach on your staff, and all he coaches is special teams. So yeah, they need to be doing better. They've had punts block, one punt block, another one. Panazzolo, his guy who's on you have a punter on scholarship, who I like personally. We talked a million times. I like him, but he needs to come on. He can't be dropping routine good snaps. Can't be getting punts blocked that he shouldn't, and he needs to be a little more consistent. It's all about consistency with special teams. Knock on wood, they haven't given up a big return yet, kickoff or punt return. So that's good. But ultimately, everybody would agree, whether Hatfield, how much is to blame since he was hurt, they've underperformed this season. It's a big minus for Texas Tech again. Jaw Burrs wants to know who has stood out thus far as red shirts. Any murmurs of players doing well? Well, one guy that was going to be redshirt, I feel like, was Tyler Carr, who they've moved over to fullback. He's at least dressed. I don't know if he's actually played yet or not, but he was a guy he was a walk-on from Canadian, defensive lineman, but with Mason Reed getting hurt and his stats being up in the air, they want some oomph, and Tyler Carr is a guy who can provide that. He was actually a really good tight end for Canadian as well. So the guy has the athleticism to do it. That's a guy who I'm thinking of, Mabanasaurus Rex is another guy, but I haven't heard a whole bunch about the red shirts. It's been about the season, and there's been so many guys that have played and that we've talked about in seemingly a different depth chart and starting group every week, that there's been so many guys to talk about right now. All right, we have a Blackie rapid fire here. Blackie's been on fire with some gift presentations here. He seems like, even despite the result last week, Blackie's been a happier Blackie. So congratulations to you there on your happiness, and awesome questions here with this rapid fire. So Joe, the first one is, what dictates when Nisby plays or sits, and why?
That is a good question. That's on a lot of people's lips right now. I mean, I think part of it, maybe the lion's share of it, is performance in practice the week of the game in comparison to the other running backs.
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard this again and again from Kingsbury, and also I'm pretty sure from Gibbs as well, that play in practice of that game week goes a long way to determine what kind of reps you get in the game itself. So I think, when you got a guy who did so well at Kansas and has really shown a lot of flashes this year, and then he does nothing against West Virginia, that's kind of what you got to conclude.
Yeah, they did give him the ball a couple times in short yardage situations. He didn't do well. He didn't get a lot of blocking in those two runs, but he didn't really run very hard either. And Trey King, he ran for a 30-yard touchdown not even midway through the third and didn't see the ball again, or at least didn't get another carry. So it's hard to get reps out there apparently at running back, because we've talked about what a good job Stockton's done so far. I mean, he's been great, and then Trey King's been very good. So there's just a lot of competition for reps there. They've used him kind of as a specialist mostly, except for when they played like Eastern Washington or Kansas. So that's just kind of where he's at right now. And I think there is something to the fact that he hasn't been here as long as the other two guys, especially not as long as Stockton. So, yeah, I mean, he has run the wrong way once or twice, and that's going to hurt your snaps right there. So I think that's where you're at with Nisby. Not exactly rapid fire, but we'll try to do better here. All right, will we see Felton carry the ball at all moving forward? Not much.
Not much. I wouldn't even be surprised to see if they kind of narrow it down to two backs the way they did this past week.
Yeah. Yep. All right, and the next one is, and this is a good one, is Tech afraid to move away from the air raid, and that's why it's like they have a drinking problem forcing the passing game on teams. We are passaholic. Well, I mean, it is the air raid, and Kingsbury was a prolific quarterback, and I mean, at Mo and all of that, of course. My whole deal, obviously, last week was just the situation was perfect for it. Your opposition is horrible against the run. I think you proved that. You had them rolling. You had a lead. They were tired. You had so much success on the ground. It just seemed like you should have. I think to most people, the obvious thing was to one good drive of running the ball, running the clock off, and getting points, and the game is over. So that's difficult to stomach, but at the same time, I don't think Kingsbury sees it that way. I think he sees it that he called the right plays and that they didn't execute. There is some logic to that. I still say you took the power out of your players' hands and you put it in West Virginia's, which I disagree with. But on the other hand, ultimately, I think they have a script of how they think it should go, and they don't deviate from that. I don't think they react as much to what's going on in the game as to like, this is what we think will work and this is what we're going to do. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's an interesting observation there at the end. As far as what you said at the beginning, yeah, I mean, that's what I've been saying for a while, and I think you're exactly right, is that that's who Cliff is. I mean, as long as he's here, long as it's the air raid, then that's what you're going to see. A lot of balls in the air. That's what he's all about.
but even when it seems like it would be obvious to pass.
Yeah, because I mean that's who he is. I think as long as, let's say that they finish out this season strong and he signs a new contract for 3-5 years, whatever, I still think that on down the line you're going to see instances of where, what the heck? Why is he throwing the ball here? Against all logic, he's throwing the football. That's just kind of what he is, and it's just something you're going to have to live with. You know?
Because, like, for example, versus Arizona State late, they had a horrible secondary. Like, I understood, and you're Texas Tech. I understand why you're still throwing. It didn't work. You almost got you beat. They almost came back and beat you. Ultimately, it worked because you won. But I'm saying you didn't hold the lead. I mean, you could have won by 3 touchdowns, but because you had a couple 3-and-outs, misfiring, passing, you let them back in. So, but I understood because they had a horrible secondary. West Virginia, I mean, there was never going to be a better case to run the ball to end the game than what you had last week, and they let it slip through their fingers. But so much for rapid fire. All right. 2411-21st wants to know about Shimanek. Will he learn to step into the pocket that is there like last week, where he ran out of clean pockets, and has Kingsbury acknowledged this is an issue? Yeah, I actually asked Kingsbury during the Tuesday presser about that, and he said, yeah, I mean, Shimanek has left pockets that they would have liked him to have stayed in. And I agree with him on this. I mean, Shimanek's only started 6 games at this point. So while he's an older player, not having that game experience, and what you're seeing is when things get tight, he's getting really nervous. And I think he's getting nervous, Mighty Joe, not because like he's afraid to take a hit or anything like that. I think he just wants to do a good job so much that he's freaking out and getting tight that way. How you can teach that, I think you just keep hammering it home. Repetition, muscle memory. But other than that, I don't know how you hammer that home, Joe.
Yeah, and I mean, to be perfectly honest, I hope to see improvement against Iowa State, but I'm not necessarily expecting it because, I mean, you haven't seen a whole lot of improvement in that so far. I mean, arguably, his worst case of the yips was against West Virginia just this past week. So, I mean, he's got to get it going in the right direction here pretty soon. And maybe it's a little bit too soon against Iowa State. So, I hope to see the improvement this week, but, I'm not counting on it.
Yeah, I'm expecting it more. Maybe the last 2 games of the season, or hopefully when you go to a bowl game, kind of like a Sonny Cumbie thing. I don't know if he's going to throw for 500 yards and 5 touchdowns against a top 5. Yeah, but you know what I'm saying. That's what I expect, is that he'll probably have it figured out by the time it's for him to go. Juicebox wants to know our win-loss record projection now. Has it changed?
I don't even remember where I was last time, but I'm at 7-5 right now, which I think maybe was where I was last time, and that depends upon beating Iowa State this week, which I think they will do, but they got to have that one or things go south. But 7-5, that's what I'm sticking with.
Yeah, there's still a game ahead. I think you had an opportunity to have I think I said on the board, a noteworthy season if you had beaten West Virginia, maybe 8+ wins. Who knows if you get on a roll? Now I do think 7-5, which is a game better than what I had before the season. I think you win this week. I think you're actually built to beat Kansas State, which sounds really weird to say, but you are, and you get them here. And then I think you beat Baylor, of course, the Jerry World. It'd be a great disappointment if you lost that game, obviously. But they're going to come ready to play, especially there at Jerry World. So that's how I see it. I think you win 3 more, go to a decent bowl game, and we'll see. Who knows what the matchup is there. Thank you for watching. That'll do it for part 1. Be sure to watch part 2 of the Insider Mailbag.